This is a question I received. Somebody gave me a call. You know, said that he's Indian and whether or not he would have a problem if he claimed kung fu. Whether or not I would have a problem with that. What do I think about that? Being an Indian person that claims kung fu. Now, I just want to make this clear. These are just my thoughts on how I feel people should use certain labels more accurately, in which to create less confusion and less corruption, especially in the realm of the martial arts. Um, but this is the way that I see it. Every culture has what they specialize in. So, off the top of my head, India is known for yoga. They're big on yoga. So, it's like their martial art expression has been transformed to become more peaceful. So, there's a lot of yogis in India. Okay. Japan, they're big on martial arts. Japan's known for samurai. They're known for ninjas. They're known for judo. They're known for karate. They're known for jujitsu, aikido. Like, they have a lot of martial art labels coming out of Japan. China is also big on the martial arts. They got kung fu, they got wushu, they got tai chi, Wing Chun, Chole Fut, Jeet Kune Do. The Philippines have Kali, what they're known for. Thailand has Thai boxing, what they're known for. Korea has Hapkido and Taekwondo is what they're known for. So India is not a country that's known for any of the martial arts. So somebody from India that wants to claim kung fu, it would have to be under a kung fu master. So you would have to train under somebody who is a master in kung fu that gives you the authority to use that label. That's the way that I see it. It can't just be any Chinese person, some random Chinese person that doesn't practice martial arts, and then you get his permission to use the kung fu labels and the Chinese labels. No, it has to be a kung fu master, pretty much, who is you're under his guidance to use that label. That's the way that I see that it should be. Um, Anybody could say martial arts, which is just general, is for Americans. They could say self-defense. They could say boxing. Nobody could stop anybody from playing basketball. These sports, boxing, wrestling, things like that. Nobody could stop a person from doing that. And those labels, what ends up happening is the way that it's regulated is like, okay, you play basketball, you say that you're a baller, but what level are you at? And then they'll be like, well, have you made it to the high school team? Have you made it to the college team? Are you at the starting lineup? And then they'll be like, are you in the NBA? Alright, if you're in the NBA, are you a starter? Alright, you're a starter, how many championships have you won? Like, that's how they assess you. As far as sports are concerned, all sports. So even with the cage fighting, even if you try to claim MMA, they'll say, hey, alright, how many fights have you won? How many professional fights have you won? What's your record? How many titles have you got? Like, they'll try to assess you based on that. So that's how they're trying to separate the real from the false. So that's how they separate it. Now, the thing is, if you could just steal any label from the East and say that you practice Kung Fu, you practice karate, who is there to separate the true from the false? Because if everybody in America could say that they practice Kung Fu or karate, then how authentic can that be if there's nobody regulating who the true from the false? So Kung Fu is not a sport, it's like an art. It's a way of it's a way of life, essentially, Kung Fu. So you would need to get the permission from somebody who is living that way, who has mastered that way, to authorize you to be representing that way. That's Chinese. It has to be a Chinese person because it's just, that's a part of their culture. Now, if you meet a Japanese person, he's not going to say Kung Fu. He's going to have his own labels that he's going to authorize you to use and promote or market or whatever the case may be. So if you meet a Japanese person, whatever label that he chooses to promote, it might be karate, and then he trains you, and then he says, okay, you could start promoting this form of karate, and you have my, you know, permission, and I will back you up and make your expression credible, whatever the case may be. So that's how I feel that it's supposed to be. And it's the same thing with the whole yoga thing. It's like, you know, yoga is supposed to be like Indians. But in Chicago, it's all being marketed and promoted and practiced and taught by pretty much non-Indians. Mostly everybody that's claiming yoga is non-Indian. So it's essentially their way, their art has been taken from their culture and exploited for profit. And it's the same thing that's going on with the martial arts. You know, and when you come from a country, when your roots come from a country that is non-martial art based, may it be Mexico, may it be India, may it be America, or Canada, or Africa, or whatever country that's where it's not in their culture to practice martial arts, then it's almost like you are a free agent. And then you could be recruited from whatever country to represent that country in the martial arts if you are worthy. But because of commercialization, it's like people are just selling labels and selling titles without individuals working hard to represent that label or title. But to me, the authenticity of these labels come from that culture of people. So Japanese people will use their martial art labels. They're not going to use Chinese labels. Chinese people will use their labels, and they're not going to use Japanese labels. And then Americans will use their labels, but they don't have martial art. They got sports. So if you're an American that is gravitated towards the arts, but they don't have martial arts in your country, then you gotta locate somebody within the culture of where you gravitate towards to train under them, in which to represent that art form under their guidance, under their permission. You know, it's a certain way of life that's very comprehensive. It's not just about fighting, but it's a certain way of thinking, a certain way of living that's very different than what is here in the West. So you really need the guidance of a master of that art to guide you in the right direction pretty much throughout your entire journey. And once you lose connection with that master and you're not representing that art anymore, you're representing your own way. So you might be practicing Kung Fu under a Chinese martial arts school for 10 years, but if you leave that school, then you're no longer representing Kung Fu. You're representing your own way. So now you might be practicing your own martial art way. And if you choose to teach, then that's what you're teaching. You're not teaching Kung Fu anymore. So it's like somebody, if he's going to go to the Shaolin Temple, and then you got the Shaolin Masters that are representing Shaolin Kung Fu, and then you got this American that's non-Chinese studying in the Shaolin Temple. Well, he's studying in that school as long as he's there, but he's never gonna be overtaking the school. He's gonna be a student, and he's gonna be a student for life. And if they authorize him to, represent the school, he's still under the authority of all the masters in the Shaolin Temple. And he's never going to be the head of the Shaolin Kung Fu, being a non-Chinese person. Now, if he leaves the Shaolin Temple and he comes back to America, he's not representing Shaolin any longer. He's representing his own way. And he had prior training in the Shaolin, but now that he's in America, he's representing his own way. So he's not representing Kung Fu anymore. Unless the Shaolin Temple wants to bring the temple, franchise the temple and bring it to America, which they haven't. But if they did, then they could, if they wanted to, they could do such a thing, but it's got to be owned and operated by the Chinese people from the Shaolin Temple. So, to me, I was thinking about it like, when you go to college, you go for 4 years, you go for 8 years. Okay, fine, you went to the school for 8 years. Hey, you went to the school for 8 years, and you got your PhD. Okay, fine. But that doesn't give you the right, just because you got your PhD, it doesn't give you the right to start teaching other people in which to give them PhDs. No. You're not representing the school as, you're not the owner of the school just because you've been there for 8 years. You're not authorized to give out certificates just because you've been there for 8 years. So you study under a martial arts school for 8 years. It doesn't mean, oh, now you can start opening up your own school under the same label and then start giving out certificates to people just because you've been to this school for 8 years. Hey, you're a student of the school, and then while you're a student of the school, you're representing the school. And if you've been there, you graduated from the school, then you're a former student. You're not a current student. And just because you're a former student, or even a current student, it doesn't give you the right to start authorizing people or certifying people under that certain label. So the way that I see it is, when you study under a Chinese school, Korean school, Japanese school, you're learning their ways. And you're part of that school as long as you are there. And they will decide whether or not you will take a bigger role in that school, whether or not you're going to help teach. But you're never going to be the main head teacher. You might be an assistant teacher, but you're not going to be the head teacher. Now, if you choose to leave the school, then you're no longer representing the Chinese martial arts, the Japanese martial arts, the Korean martial arts. You're representing your own way in the martial arts. Unless you choose, not you choose, unless that school decides to franchise their school and then have you assist in running one of these franchises, then that's different. You got a kung fu school, and then they franchise into another location, and then they ask for you to help run that school, then that's different. So just because people watch some videos of somebody teaching karate, other videos of somebody teaching jiu-jitsu, other videos of some people teaching kung fu, it doesn't mean that you've mastered all those arts and then now you're authorized and certified to teach all of those arts. Essentially, you've mastered none of them, and you haven't received permission from any of those creators to use those art forms, and you're not qualified to teach those arts. You could teach your own art, come up with your own label, but it's not affiliated with those other labels of those cultures, unless there's a direct link. So that's the way that I see it. There's something about your blood that just cannot be replaced. And I didn't force upon these labels on the people. This is what the society, the government has chosen. They have chosen to label people in this way. So then they'll say, okay, what race are you? Are you white? Are you black? Are you Hispanic? Are you Asian? And then they'll be like, pick one. Well, for me, if I have a lot of black friends, it still doesn't make me black. For me, I might have been born in America, but it still doesn't make me white. I might be able to speak Spanish, but it doesn't make me Hispanic. If I had to choose accurately, then I would fall under the category of Asian. So it's the same thing with these labels. It's like, if you're going to say karate, then you're supposed to be Japanese. If you're going to say Muay Thai, then you're supposed to be Thai. If you're going to say Kali, then you're supposed to be Filipino. If you're going to say Kung Fu, then you're supposed to be Chinese. Now, if you're using those labels and you are not of that race, then you need to be affiliated with somebody that is a part of that race that's giving you the reason to use that label. But, just because you watched 10 Kung Fu videos one night, and you watched another 10 Muay Thai videos another night, and another 10 karate videos another night, it doesn't mean that you can start teaching all those different arts just because you've watched those videos. And there's not even any interaction between you and the makers of those videos in whatsoever way. And as I stated, it has to be a master of that art from that culture. You know, a master of karate, a master of jiu-jitsu, a master of judo, a master of kung fu, a true master that gives you the right to use that label and say that, hey, you're representing this label with me. Because the master has to assess your development. If there's nobody assessing your development, then who is giving you the right to say that you have the right to use that label? It's like going to college, but then there's nobody testing you to see if you deserve that bachelor's degree or that PhD. There's nobody testing you to see if you're worthy of calling yourself a doctor. There's nobody testing you to see if you're worthy of calling yourself a police officer. There's no one testing you to see if you're worthy of calling yourself a dentist. So yet, everybody could go around calling themselves sensei, sifu, master. But who is assessing these people and whether or not they are qualified in using these labels and these titles? And another thing is, if you have a fraudulent master that is handing out and distributing labels and titles without discrimination pretty much to everybody, selling it for cheap, or giving people ranks and titles without them working for it and without even monitoring these individuals that have obtained these titles and these ranks, then it just furthers the corruption. But it makes it even more corrupt when not only the people of the culture are corrupting their own labels, but then there's a bunch of foreigners from other countries that are even corrupting it themselves even further, making it even worse. So, for example, you might have a real kung fu master like Bruce Lee or Jet Li, and they might train one person to be like, alright, you're representing kung fu the way it should be. Only one person. And then you got Jackie Chan, who's Chinese as well, that might come in and be like, you know what, I'm gonna certify 500 million people to represent kung fu. And then that is a corruption, but it's a Chinese person that has contributed to this corruption. And that happens. So you might have a Korean person that hands out 1 million black belts to whoever just because. Doesn't matter how old they are, doesn't matter if they can kick or punch, doesn't matter if they've been in and out of prison, doesn't matter if they're fit, doesn't matter anything. He just wants to certify 1 million people to be black belts. Just because. So you got a Korean person that could do that. So then that's corrupting the art form. But then what I'm saying is, what's making it even worse is when a foreigner comes in and does it as well. So rather than Jackie Chan doing it, you got some random white person coming in and saying, okay, I certify you 500 million people to be masters of kung fu. under my authority. So that's almost like maybe like a Steven Seagal certifying like 50,000 people to be black belts in Aikido, when Aikido is a Japanese art, and the creator, founder, died many years ago. But then here you got this white guy named Steven Seagal who happens to be famous, and then he's just handing out titles and certificates to all these different people that don't even deserve to be representing that art. And then that art ends up becoming further corrupted because of this foreigner that has come in to destroy its reputation. So that is the main thing, the main issue that I'm talking about. You know, so say you're in India and you want to have your own expression in the martial arts, you've been inspired by Kung Fu artists, then you could create your own expression, but you can't use Kung Fu. You just have to have your own Indian terminology, and then represent your Kung Fu from India. So it's kind of like the founder of Aikido, where at that time there's a bunch of jiu-jitsu and karate people that are expressing it in ways of which he didn't agree with. And then he decided to create his own way, his own art, and he decided to call it Aikido. He didn't want to do judo like everybody else, or karate or jiu-jitsu. So he created his own way. He called it Aikido. He didn't call it Kung Fu. He didn't call it Taekwondo. He called it Aikido, which is his own way within the Japanese martial arts. So if you live in India and there's no martial art forms that you connect with, and you want to have your own unique expression, then you could call it your own and then label it something uniquely to you. Like Bruce Lee, he named his Jeet Kune Do. He didn't call it Jiu-Jitsu. He didn't call it Judo. He didn't call it Muay Thai boxing. He called it Jeet Kune Do. Something unique to him and his culture. So when you call something Kung Fu, then you're supposed to have Chinese roots that lead back to Kung Fu. But if you don't have Chinese roots, then the proper way to do it is to use the labels and the language of where your roots are. So if you're Thai, then you will use your own labels to express your art in Thai. Or Korean, or Japanese, Chinese, Indian. You know, so that is essentially the proper approach that I see. Because right now, the way that it's going is a huge corruption to me. Where you got all these Chinese immigrants that don't even claim martial arts, don't even claim Kung Fu. They're just humbly, modestly working in restaurants. They don't even practice martial arts, even though it's a big part of their culture. And then you got like hordes and hordes of non-Chinese people claiming Chinese titles, claiming themselves to be masters. Masters of Tai Chi, masters of Wing Chun, masters of Kung Fu, masters of Wushu, masters of Praying Mantis, masters of Jeet Kune Do. Just whatever label that they want to steal and take from the Chinese, they will steal and take it to make money off of it. And these non-Chinese people are doing it, and that is where the corruption, that's where I see the huge corruption. It's like, I'm not saying that people can't teach the martial arts. I'm saying, okay, go ahead and teach it, but teach it under your own label. Don't take somebody else's label that does not belong to you and then start teaching under that label to further corrupt the reputation of that label. That's pretty much what I'm saying. You know, you need the permission of the creators of these labels. You need their permission to use these labels. And you need to live up to the reputation of what these labels are supposed to represent. The more fraudulent, corrupted people out there that are misrepresenting Kung Fu, the worse it is for Kung Fu. You know, people spend millions of dollars to protect the labels. Like Apple computers, for example. They spend millions protecting their brand. You know, and I even feel the martial art label needs to be protected. But, you know, with this whole MMA, them calling cage fighting martial arts, I disagree with that. And I've been trying to communicate, to express why it's wrong to say martial arts under that type of sport fighting. I feel that as people that practice martial arts, that value martial arts, we need to properly use labels to not contribute towards the corruption of these arts. You know, so to be very careful what you associate with Jeet Kune Do, what you associate with Kung Fu, what you associate with martial arts. You know, that's what I'm saying.